Welcome everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today we are looking at how AI agents can talk to your database in plain English and actually give you useful business answers. So let's get started. Hello, Kuba.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon, Bartek. My name is Kuba, and I build the agent that we are going to look at today. I'm really glad you are here. And let's start.
Yeah, perfect. So quick intro. Kuba is a senior team lead at Stream, expert in Python, data engineering on Databricks and Spark, and he's been deep in LangGraph and LangChain. He built what we are going to show today. And I'm Bartosz. I work on AI architecture, cloud native setups, and getting AI systems into production. Kuba will walk you through the technical details, and I'll ask the questions you're probably thinking about. So let's dive in. Okay, Kuba, before we start, the invite said an agent that speaks your business language. What does this actually mean? Sounds a bit marketing to me. What problem we are going to solve?
That's a fair point. So let me make it concrete. I'll give you two situations that happen in companies very often, I think. So first, imagine there is a new vice president of sales. It joins. She just joined. It's her first Monday, and she has questions. So like, who are our top customers in Germany? How did Q3 look like? Or which products are underperforming? She can't get any of them. She can't answer any of them by herself. So she asks around, and imagine that analysts are in a meeting. So she has to wait. Then the second scenario, we have a quarterly review and two department heads walk in with different numbers for top customers, one measured by revenue, one by other metric. Both are correct, but by their own logic, and neither knows of the other definition. So the meeting becomes a definitional debate instead of a strategic conversation. So here we see the common thread. We have the data, we have capabilities, but everything is locked behind one person, one interpretation, or just one tool that only some people can use. With this agent, that works a little bit different. You can type the question the way you would write it to a colleague in plain English or your mother tongue, no technical syntax, and then you get the concrete answer straight from the database. No dashboard that someone had to build first, no tickets, no SQL. And that shortcut from question to decision has a direct impact on pipeline follow-up, chart reaction time, margin protection, just to name a few.
Yeah, but that sounds like every database chatbot from the last 2 years.
The difference is in how it is built.
Yeah, exactly. So you nailed it. So that's exactly what we are going to show you today. So here we have Kuba prepared a demo for you. So Kuba, you can take it from here and share your screen.
So let me switch. So the agent works under the Gradio UI as a chatbot. So you see there is no dashboard, no fancy page, just the chat where you can query pages. And now the first thing I would like to show, the simplest one, is a scenario that I think most teams will recognize when we have someone new to the data or someone without SQL background and somebody who needs to get oriented pretty quickly how the data looks like. So we can ask the agent about the database. So let's see what tables we have in the database. Now, for this demo, I use the well-known Northwind database. So we have categories, customers, orders. So it's a database, for those who don't know, that represents something that can happen in sales. So in just a few seconds, without any technical stuff written in the chatbot, I got the content of the database. But that's pretty simple. So why don't we get the sample of one page, of one table? And again, I don't need any technical knowledge. to get a few rows from the table. So this can allow users to query the database very fast. We can ask the more sophisticated questions like show me customers per country. How many customers do we have? So again, we don't know how a customer is connected with the country. It's the responsibility of the agent to check how the database is built. And then we see that we have France and Germany with top customers, 11. And we always get English description of the answer plus tabular data that we could possibly copy to something, some report, for example. But you see, the point here isn't complexity. I just wanted to show that there is no technical barrier to entry. A new hire, a manager, a sales representative, they can start getting answers straight from day one. Another possible scenario is that, for example, a junior analyst who knows the business, maybe is not too deep in SQL, or even a senior analyst who wants to move faster on explanatory questions without writing complex queries from scratch, then he can also use this agent. Let's try to ask something more difficult, more complex. So let's see how many, which customers placed orders with the total value above the average. So we have to wait just a few seconds to see which customers fall within this this request. And what we do have here is not only the data, but we also are able to check the SQL which is generated. So if somebody is familiar with SQL, can verify whether the query is okay, can take it and modify, use it further. Now, I will ask another question, because in this case that I showed you recently, that was very well-defined query. So it is very easy to understand what I wanted to achieve. But in business, those questions usually are not so simple. So for example, let's ask about products that are losing momentum. And losing momentum is something that probably is not known for the agent. So we should be able to get the information, and we see that the losing momentum, he assumed that the decline in revenue over a specific period, and there's this explanation that those products, the query checks recent 6-month period and compare it with the 6-month period over the year ago. And I have to admit that this query was already asked, and that's why the agent did this assumption. But in general, what I wanted to show is that it can ask for explanations when ambiguity appears. So whenever something like losing momentum appears and it has been asked for the first time, the agent asks me to provide a proper definition. What does losing momentum mean? And I hope we will have ability to see such ambiguity in the last part that I would like to show, because I would like to check one more thing. I would like to get the data broken by quarter in year 2013. This is, I used 2013 because Node-based database is a database that contains data from some period in the past. And now we saw that we got this information. So every employee has generated revenue by each quarter. And what we can do now is we can ask the following question, the updating question. So, or do the same for team. And here the idea is that it remembers that recently we talked about employees and how each sales representative, how he did in the year 2013. Now, I don't have to provide the whole query again. We can see that currently we see data from year 2014. And let's try to compare those results. And that's how the ambiguity resolving question look like. So which specific result are you referring to? So let's provide the information about revenue per sale by quarter. And we will see that in just a few seconds, we should get the result. So we can see that it provided answer for each person from both years, but not in columns. So we would have to discuss with the agent so that we don't want in one row all years, but we want to compare year by year, side by side. We can do this, but before that, I would like to show one thing that happened in the meantime, and I didn't focus on that. Now, in the first query, we see that we got the result. Nothing unusual. We made the query and got the result, but it turns out that it had to replace some SQLite incompatible functions with when converting string to time, and that's one of the, I would say, main features of this agent, that you don't see those errors. They are being fixed on the fly automatically. So whenever there is some technical issue, the agent tries to locate it, fix it, rerun the execution, and get the correct answers. And now let's go back to our case with 2 years data. Let's try to tell him that I need to see both years side by side in separate columns. And unfortunately, we have to, again, provide this information.
Yeah, but at least we can tell it's a live demo, so nothing prepared up front, but rather than a live example.
Indeed. I have to admit that it's very, those questions are very precise, since I know that calendar quarters should be used, so everything should be fine. So let's, unfortunately, it provides hints, and most of the time those hints are precise and exact. Specific information. So as you can see, It asks all the ambiguities that it detects in current flow, and you can provide all the answers immediately. You don't have to get the query about one thing, answer, then another ambiguity, your answer. So it takes, I think, shorter time. And now we got the results. So each employee divided by quarter, and we have the revenue from 2013, 2014. So as you can see, you don't have to provide all those answers again and again. The agent doesn't ask the same questions all the time. It knows. It reused the definitions from the conversation and from the knowledge that it collects. And that's how the knowledge store is working.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, Jakub, for this insightful demo. So let me switch to presentation back again. And yeah, so let's start with the architecture then, because I can see it's based on LangGraph. So why not a simple chain, and why not one big prompt for this purpose?
One big prompt may work fine for simple questions. But as I said, in business environment, questions are rarely simple. Most of the time they are vague and they're specified. They require several steps of logic. So a single prompt on a vague question is a liability. You can get an answer, but you don't know whether it is based on the right assumptions, and then numbers built on wrong assumptions can end up in the board deck. The LangGraph, it lets me model the flow as a graph. So nodes are concrete steps. Edges are conditions and transitions, sometimes conditional transitions. And there is a state, an object, the data structure shared across the whole graph that I can inspect, I can debug, and each node is aware of the current state of the execution. As I said, each node has single responsibility, like question classification, ambiguity detection, SQL planning, executing, error fixing. So I can take out each of these nodes and swap it with new version. I can test each node in isolation without changing the overall behavior of the graph. So this is an agent composed of many roles, closer to a digital assistant following a process than a black box that returns something. And from the business perspective, that has concrete value. It's predictable, auditable, and it behaves in such a way that it can tell you, I can't answer this question because. So instead of silent failure, you really get an answer.
Exactly. So let's take a closer look at this graph, and here is presented on the screen. So yeah, that's 15 nodes as far as I can see. So that's not just database chatbot.
Indeed, that's an agent. It's over 15 nodes, and every node has this specific role.
Yeah, so all right, how does these nodes actually talk to each other?
I mentioned the notion of a graph state. That's an object that passes through the entire graph, and every node can read it, can update it. I, as a developer, can view it at any time and debug the graph. That lets you see in one place what the agent knows, what it assumed, what it generated, how many times it tries to fix an error. It also provides some context to the agent, like config at the very beginning or known terms.
So known terms, so it's something learned and it's persistent, so shared between sessions?
Yes. Remember that during the demo, when the agent asked me, what does it mean losing momentum? I told you that it had some prior knowledge, because I ran the query just before the demo and it already knew. So when the user explains ambiguity, the agent stores that in the knowledge store. So it doesn't ask again, even if another person would ask about losing moment or the same notion. In practice, this means that something important for the business, the KPI standardization, because you define once what active customer or week month mean, and then this definition works consistently for every user and not just for one person who happened to remember how it was calculated.
Yeah, so the question is, where do you store it?
In this particular case, I use pure JSON file, but this is an MVP. In production, it can be a vector store, a relational database, Redis database, like anything where I can store and retrieve data from. What matters is that this mechanism is decoupled from the rest of the graph.
Yeah, so the agent is not just answering questions, it's building up the company's vocabulary over time. So definitions that survive people leaving the team. That's a pretty big deal, I think.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, good. So a technical question here. How does the conversation memory work under the hood? So LangGraph has its own checkpointers as far as I know.
Yes, so each user, when starts the session, has its own so-called thread ID, and multiple users can talk to the same agent simultaneously without mixing up their context. So using different memory configurations, we can persist those sessions. And then the interaction with our agent can last very long. You can come back tomorrow and continue the conversation just where you left.
And what about the database? The webinar title says database agnostic. So how does this actually work?
For this demonstration, I use SQLite, like for speed of setup and sake of simplicity. But as I said, engine-dependent nodes, like all the nodes in the graph, are swappable. So I could write a version for Postgres. I could create a big query connector, Snowflake, like just new introspector, query builder, executor, and fixer. Just a matter of few nodes, and the rest of the graph stays identical.
And what about non-relational database? We can see Neo4j here.
That's possible and very interesting, actually, because Neo4j has its own query language. And instead of natural language to SQL planner, I could create your language to Cipher planner, then executor, data collector, and then the rest, everything follows the same path. And that's the power of LangGraph and its modularity. Sorry.
So you can even have hybrid queries. So one part from relational database and other part from Graph1.
That would be very fine direction and genuinely exciting, but this is an MVP and we don't have such solution yet.
Yeah, so let me ask it differently. What do you have it right now and what's not there yet?
So what we already have, I have already showed. So that's what we have. But still, for the production, depending on the case, we need to provide additional layers to this agent. And what I will say about right now depends on each case separately, actually. So before it can be deployed to hundreds of users inside the company, what we need to do is first model security. Like there is no protection against, for example, prompt injection. So malicious user could try to inject instructions through the text field. But each client could have like different level of this security issue.
Yeah, and this is not trivial in large language model systems.
Not at all. And then second issue is the access control, because not every user should see all the data. So the agent doesn't know that. Anna from marketing shouldn't see salary figures. That requires an authorization layer on the executor node or some pre-filters on the schema.
Yeah, so something like column masking or row level security. Yeah,
exactly. That's the third part, the sensitive data for GDPR, PIIs, PHIs, etc. If the database contains personal data, the agent shouldn't return it in raw form. So we need the detection and masking mechanisms. And then a fourth issue is cost and latency. Each question triggers several calls to LLM, like classification, ambiguity detection, planning, results synthesizing. So we can work with one model like GPT-5, for example, but at scale, we would have to introduce query caching, result caching, maybe merging some steps, definitely per node model selection. So you don't have to use the most sophisticated model to detect intent of the user. So that's real engineering work. So the honest framing is that this is not upload your database and it works. It's a actually solid architectural foundation for custom deployment, a starting point, not a finished product. So I think that's healthier than selling a magic solution.
Yes, exactly. So Kuba, let's bring it back for the business people watching right now. For someone who needs to explain this to their manager tomorrow, what does this actually give them?
Well, I would focus on three things. So first, time from question to answer. It drops 2 minutes. For decision makers, that has a direct impact on how fast you react to risks or opportunities.
But still maintaining the quality of the answer.
Yes, because the agent explains its assumptions, it shows the SQL it generated, so you can verify it. It's not a black box. You can check how it worked. And then data democratization. A manager, sales representative, someone from operations, they can ask questions without learning specific query language. The agent translates natural language into the language of the database.
And the third factor?
Institutionalized business knowledge. The definitions that agent has learned, the active customer, week, month, this is company knowledge, codified in the knowledge store. It doesn't disappear when an analyst leaves. It scales to new employees. It eliminates the situation where two departments report different numbers because they define the same metric differently.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest value for me. So domain knowledge as data, so not locked in someone's head or hidden in a formula. But I think there is an interesting question here. Does this tool replace the analyst team?
Absolutely not. I would say it's a complementary solution, not substitution.
And what's next? Any plans?
I would like to introduce the security layers, at least those that are, let's say, universal. I would like to introduce support for a larger database out of the box just by proper config. And the production interface. Right now we work on Gradio in a notebook, and I would like to have it as a separate tool that can answer to REST API queries. But I'd love to chat. If any of you have a specific use case, I'm happy to talk about it, how this could be adapted to your needs.
Exactly, and then that brings us to the close of this presentation, this demo. So Kuba, thank you for the presentation and for the explanation that you provided. And that was a genuinely concrete session. So real architecture, real demo, real trade-offs. So not just slides. And for everyone, that's our main content for today. Now it's your turn. So we have a few minutes for your questions. Drop them in the chat. I'll read them and Kuba will answer. And while we are thinking about your questions, the GitHub link for the demo project that Kuba just showed previously would be linked in the description of these materials. And if you have a specific use case at your company and want to explore what an agent like this could for you, we'd love to connect. So make on that another make on that just in a second. And I think while we are waiting for the questions, let me verify if we have one. Yeah, we have some questions already, so maybe we'll tackle them. Okay, probably are going to be displayed right here on the screen. Okay, we have a couple of them actually. So the first one, I wanted to ask how difficult is it to plug this agent into existing data stack?
So I mentioned that this solution is decoupled from the system that already exists in the company. So it sits like next to existing systems. It does not interfere anything. What it needs is an access to a database, plus policies who can access, who can see what data, and then it can work side by side with existing stack.
Yeah, thank you, Kuba, for explanation. And yeah, we are ready for another one. From an enterprise perspective, is your solution model agnostic, or are you locked into a specific LLM provider?
No, it can work with any LLM provider. Definitely, each of them has some pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. We would love to test it. So why not? We can attach any language model that I think exists.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for explanation. And another one. And what would a typical pilot project look like in terms of timeline, effort, and business outcomes?
The timeline is very difficult to estimate because every implementation is different. It depends on what the user already has, what he expects. So very hard to say without prior knowledge of a few things how long it would take. About the effort and business outcomes, the best starting point is a small, well-scoped pilot focused on just one high-value use case, not a big bang and solve everything, all problems. Focus on one thing, just like one domain with measurable outcome and fast validation of value. And then we can decide whether we go further.
Yeah, so no one-size-fits-all solution, rather than it should be adjusted to specific needs.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, and another one, how do you handle security and access control so the agent does not expose data people shouldn't see?
So that's the issue of building the node properly, the one that executes SQL. So this is the node that has to authenticate as a given user. So it's not that the agent works as everybody. It has to make queries as a person, and then those person access privileges are being used. And so then you cannot ask questions about data that you don't have access to. And the same with masking and then access to some PII data. So it depends on your access right, not the agent.
Yes, thank you for this explanation. And do we have any questions? It seems that no, it was the last one. Yeah, so before we close, let me tell you a bit about the stream. So the team behind this webinar, we have over 160 professionals. We've delivered more than 120 projects, and we've been in the market for 9 years. We work across more than 10 industries, specializing in generative AI, data engineering, MLOps, and cloud solutions. If what Kuba showed you today resonates with you, you are trying to solve, we'd love to talk. And we don't sell magic buttons. We help you build things that actually work in production. So you can scan this QR code to get more details about this. And yeah, that's our last slide. If you'd like to talk about your database, your use case, or just explore what an agent like this could do for your team, reach out. You'll find our contacts here on the QR code that I just mentioned, and all of the links from today, like link to the GitHub repository, which was shared by Jakub, will be in the description. So Kuba, anything to add from your side?
No, just thank you for good questions. Thank you for joining the meeting, and maybe talk to you soon.
Yeah, so thank you, Kuba, and thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your time and your questions today. So see you on the next one. Goodbye and take care.
Goodbye.